What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, checking out a brand new model from Jack Wolf Knives, the Bionic Jack. And this one's going to be dropping at authorized dealers as well as direct from Jack Wolf on Friday, October 18th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. 2-bar again by Sean Tiffany, and I'll make sure to link to all of the relevant drop details in the description of the video so you know where to find that. Now, for those that are familiar with the Jack Wolf naming convention, you probably already recognize Bionic Jack is awfully similar to Cyborg Jack, and that's because this is the newest locking model based on that Cyborg Jack pattern. I only recently got my first Cyborg Jack, and it was a mini Cyborg, but immediately became one of my favorite patterns that they make, so really excited to see it get the locking model treatment. They sent over the Liquid Gold Kirinite with the Black Stonewash finish, which is great, keeps me complete on the Kirinite collection for Jack Wolf. This is the 6-1 that they released in the 6-1 in my collection, obviously. And pricing on these is going to be consistent with what we've seen from previous locking models. So $349 for the main 4 configurations. And I do specify that because, as usual, we have a dealer exclusive, this time through Knife Center. And the dealer exclusive has something we haven't seen before: titanium covers, specifically crystallized titanium with a blurple ano. And so that one is priced at $359, slight increase in price, only about a $10 difference, but definitely something to keep in mind if you're thinking about picking up that model. And that's just to account for the cost of the increased cost of the covers. Titanium's naturally more expensive than Kirinite or the camo carbon and fat carbon and some of those other options. And so that makes sense that it's a little bit priced higher. Now, I'll go over the other configurations, all of the specs on this knife in a moment here, but first I did want to talk about the deployment method because it's kind of the star of the show on a lot of these locking models. So as usual, we get a front flipper, which has been consistent with the previous locking models, but you see it's gone through a sort of redesign to fit better and work better with the Cyborg pattern, and it works very, very well, just as effectively as the previous models. I'm not always the most adept at front flippers, but I've found all of the Jack Wolf front flippers to just be super intuitive. Run your thumb across the top of that bolster, catch on the jimping of that front flipper, and it's going to open consistently every time, and that was the case here as well. So really easy to use and actuate. In addition to that front flipper though, we do get that fuller, and you can see accessible on both sides, so we have a fuller on both sides of the knife. Perfect for that middle finger flick. Get your nail in there. Really easy to flick this one open. And you can also do it with your thumb if you have a long enough nail. My nail's not quite long enough to get in there, but if you put the meat of your thumb in there, you can usually flick it open as well. So it gives you lots of options in terms of your deployment. I also find this one to have the best acoustics that we've heard since the Gunslinger Jack. One of the main things I loved about that one is the ting that you got on it, and it makes a comeback here. It's not as pronounced as the Gunslinger Jack still, but it's still nice to hear it back, and so I'll stop talking for a moment while I flick this open. So you heard that ting at the end. Really beautiful acoustics on this one. Super snappy action, ultra smooth, just like usual. And so really love that aspect about it. We also get a bolster lock on most of these configurations, and so you can see that here. The only exception is going to be your titanium stonewash configuration. That's going to have a full frame lock because it doesn't have covers, but any of the models with covers are going to have this bolster lock. Plenty of access to that. Again, super smooth. It'll fall and drop to your thumb. You can shake it the rest of the way closed. Really fun one to fidget with. Now, one thing to note with the bolster lock, and this is always going to be a problem with bolster locks, is you see when it is open, it kind of exposes the corner of that cover. They did knock it back a little bit, so it's not a sharp point, but there's really not a lot of great options to avoid that. You can kind of dial it back and cut it back this direction, and that'll get rid of the point, but it looks a little bit ugly, and so they do choose to keep that there. I'll say that in any position that I'm using this in, if I'm cutting with it, my fingers are not touching that, so it doesn't really make a difference. Obviously, everyone's hands are a little bit different, so it's possible you'll feel it, but even if you're purposely seeking that out, running your finger across it, it's not sharp or uncomfortable because they did kind of file that back to a rounded point. Now, if you know you're someone who will be bothered by that, I'd probably just go with the titanium stonewash version to avoid it and just get the frame lock on this one. Now, in terms of specs on this one, as usual, it's a step up in size compared to the slip joint models. So obviously bigger than the Cyborg, obviously much bigger than the mini Cyborg. This one comes in at about 7.7 inches overall in this open position, 4.41 inches of that are in the handle. And that's one of the things I love so much about this design, is you can see how it kind of slopes downwards over here on both the top and bottom of that handle. Just makes for a really comfortable grip. You super locked in. You don't feel like you're going anywhere because it's kind of curving down in your hand. Really just locks in that grip effectively. And the pocket clip hides behind those two knuckles, so no hot spots whatsoever on this knife. Ultra comfortable. You also have that jimping along the spine to grab onto your thumb in front of the handle. Behind the handle, it's not really doing much, but you'll see when the blade is closed, that's where you're catching that front flipper. So that portion is for deployment, and then the portion for catching your thumb is out in front of that handle, and nice and grabby there as well. In terms of our blade, we get a 3.28 inch clip point style blade, S90V as usual, 60 to 61 HRC on that. And this one has that black stonewash that's so well matched to the titanium. It's one of my favorite finishes they do, one of the more recent ones that they've added to the lineup, but I like it a lot better than the kind of glossy black finish. That looks great as well, but inevitably you're gonna start getting scratches and snail trails, and it'll look like that. And so this just kind of skips the in-between period, and so I always like these black stonewash, not just on Jack Wolf, any knives, as long as it's done well, I think looks great. You can see the pocket clip and backspacer are also matched to it in this configuration, so all ties together really nicely. Haven't even really talked about that Kirinite. Absolutely beautiful. This is the first time they're using the liquid gold, and I think it looks great. Kind of reminds me of honey. It's got these deep black swirls in it though that look great, and that's going to be different in every single one. Just like any of these kind of randomly poured acrylics, you're going to get a unique knife every single time, which I always love. I love the example that I got. We got some dark rich blacks. There's a lot of glitter in that gold that shimmers in the light, and so overall just a great looking cover option. This one's also fairly lightweight at 2.8 ounces, so not going to be ultra heavy. Mentioned the tube art this time by Sean Tiffany, and so that's always going to be the case when you get a version 1 of the knife. When they do round 2, they usually go with J. Gonzo. Now, in terms of the other configurations, you really can't go wrong this time. Usually there's 2 or 3 that kind of lead the board for me, and maybe that's true here, but I would be happy with any of these 5. There are some really great combos. One of my favorites of the others is the Camo Carbon Watermelon Sugar. Really cool kind of pink and green camo carbon that just looks really, really good. Super vibrant, pops really well, and nice bright colors. You also get the classic Frost from Fat Carbon. The titanium stonewash that I mentioned, that has the purple anodized hardware and backspacer and pocket clip. You have the Knife Center exclusive, which is that crystallized titanium with the blurple anode that I mentioned previously, and of course this liquid gold Kirinite. Now with all of those, you do get a plug, so the locking models come with a pocket clip, but if you want to carry it a little bit more traditionally, you can remove that and it has the plug. These ones don't have the numbering, but I'm assuming these are still made to fit with the specific knife, and so I would try and hold on to this. You can get a replacement if you lose it, but it may not be as precise of a fit as the one that actually comes with your knife. So always make sure I just drop them back in the tube. That way, if I ever need it, I can just pull out the tube and I know exactly where to find it. But in addition to this, you don't get a slip with the locking models, but you do still get your cloth. This time we got this kind of baby green, which is cool. You obviously have your tube and your clip plug. We get our POG with the matching art. And so this is a really cool one. It's kind of the start of that Bionic. It's only the arm and shoulder. So really appreciated the artwork on this one. Bionic Jack on the back of that POG. And of course our 2 stickers. And these ones are a different design. It has the We Can Rebuild Them, which is super fun as well. Overall though, super excited about this one. Like I said, I like all 5 of the configurations. So really kind of hard to go wrong. But would love to hear if you're planning on picking one of these up, which model you're going to be going for. And hopefully I'll be able to check some of these out at CCKS. I know they'll be there. I'll be there at the end of the month. Don't know if he'll have the Knife Center exclusive, since obviously those are going to only be sold through Knife Center, but a lot of times he'll bring one of every model just for viewing. So I'm hoping to be able to check that out there, because the pictures really do it justice, but really want to see what it looks like in person. I have a flashlight that's that crystal titanium with a blurple anode. I think they actually called it periwinkle anode, but I kind of want to see how it compares to that, if it's a perfect match. May need to get one to match those up in the future. But as usual, let me know what you thought of this one down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, joining the channel as a member, or even checking out some of the previous videos on the channel. All help the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.